Hey PTC, what does it mean that God is all-powerful? Are there things that he can't do? And does that make him not all-powerful? Let's explore all that in this week's video. Before we really jump in, I want to mention that this is going to be the first part in a mini-series. See the description box below for more details. Now moving right along, let's start with omnipotence, which comes from Latin to mean all-powerful. So what exactly does it mean to be all-powerful? Intuitively, it seems like it means that God can do anything, which is in a sense true. But this also leaves Christians open for attacks such as, if God were all-powerful and he was all good, he would want to get rid of all the evil and pain in the world. But since there is pain and evil in the world, God's either not all-powerful or he's not actually good. God is all-powerful in certain things, things that align with his nature and will, but not in all things, as that would leave it open to nonsensical wordplay such as, can God build a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? Second, just because one has power doesn't mean they're forced to exercise it. If they were forced to use it, it would seem as though they weren't really fully in control of their power, which to me doesn't seem powerful at all. Well, then the question comes up, well, why wouldn't God use his power? Doesn't this make him not good? No, it doesn't, and I think he does use his power, but we have to acknowledge that God is limited, but that this in no way takes away from his omnipotence. But how can God be limited if he's all-powerful, you might ask? As far as I can tell, God is limited only by himself. Don Stewart put it like this: God has limited himself only to acts that are consistent with his righteous, loving character. To demonstrate what this all means, let's look at free will. God gave us free will, which necessitates the ability to choose things apart from his complete control, even things that might lead us away from him, things we might call evil. There would be no real freedom if we couldn't choose to do these things. It would be like going to a fair and being told that you could choose from any color balloon, but the only balloon color you could pick from was blue. This is why God couldn't create a world in which there were free-willed people always choosing to do the right thing, because that would preclude free will itself. Relating this to the main point, none of this means that God's overall power is limited. It just means that for God to make it so that there is no evil, the secondary subordinate part of his will, that we do no evil, that everything is done in accordance with him, would have to override the overarching primary part of his will, that we have free will. And God cannot contradict himself. Think of it like this. A mother wants her children to pick up their toys, but she also wants them to become free-thinking, responsible beings who will pick it up on their own. So in one sense, it might be against her will that they don't pick up their toys, but it still fits within the overarching framework of her will in that they're still becoming these free-thinking, autonomous beings. So they can disobey, but that in no way diminishes from her will or from her power. Now that we have some of that sorted out, let's look at what Christians mean when they say that God is all-powerful, since many people have used, admittedly, likely unknowingly, a different definition of omnipotence to attack Christianity. For Christians, the word omnipotent is merely a term used to refer to the teachings of Scripture about God's great power. Nothing more, nothing less. Yes, omnipotent comes from Latin meaning all-powerful, but this isn't exactly what Christians mean by omnipotence. Rather, and this is crucially important, it's simply our attempt to describe the nature of something incomprehensible. It's the closest we can get. Continuing, we might look to MacArthur's thoughts that God can do anything according to his infinite ability, but will do only those things that are consistent with himself. That's why he can't lie, tolerate sin, or save impenitent sinners. People commonly accuse God of not being able or not being willing to save the souls of the damned, people going to hell. But it's not that God isn't willing. He willingly died for us on the cross, after all. It's that he can't. It's this idea of limited power. Sin is fundamentally contrary to God's nature. He can't make us love him. We quite literally damn ourselves by choosing to turn from him. Now we can try to blame God for creating these to-be-damned sinners in the first place, which we'll touch on in the second part of this series, but that in no way makes God responsible for our choices. He wants us to be saved. We choose otherwise. To wrap all of this up, once God desires to do something, he is all-powerful in doing it. But this doesn't mean that God has the capability to do any sort of nonsensical, illogical thing that we might think up, such as making a circular square. It just means that he has all the power to do what he wants. But of course, what he wants is going to be consistent with his will and his nature. So in effect, God's actions are limited, but only by his nature. We can't ask God to do things outside of his will or nature any more than we can ask God to not be God. Hey PTC, hope you enjoyed that video and got something out of it. I know some of the material can be dense and a little difficult to understand, maybe even seem nonsensical. So as always, I strongly encourage that you continue to research and learn on your own, because these videos are really just an introduction. They're a high-level overview. They are not meant to be exhaustive or perfect. But still, I hope you're able to learn a little bit about God's nature and His omnipotence. And past that, next week we'll have the second installment of God's omniscience. So keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, have a good week.